Hi, and thanks for joining today. Today we'll be reading Moose the Worry Mutt Goes to Doggie Daycare by Jaime Crowley and Kristen Ohlenforst. That's me. Illustrated by Holly Weinstein. This is a book about learning to bark back at your worries and learning to grow from a worrier into a warrior. Moose awoke with a sudden itch behind his ear. When he scratched at it, a familiar foe hopped onto his shoulder. It was Fret, the flea, come to bother him about his first day at Doggie Daycare. Moose had always been a worrier, not to be confused with a warrior. Fret was to blame. He was fantastic at finding things to worry about, and he whispered these worries into Moose's floppy brown ear. As Moose sat down to breakfast, Fret got right to work. Today could be an absolute disaster. Moose felt butterflies in his belly. You won't see your parents for hours. Moose tried to nibble at his kibble, but those pesky butterflies made it hard to eat. Hurry up, you'll be late. Anxious to start the day, Moose scrambled toward the back door. As his mom drove Moose to daycare, Fret kept at it. What if you fail at learning how to sit? You might get bullied by a bulldog. Every time Moose listened to Fret, Fret grew bigger, louder, and stronger. When they got to daycare, Moose stayed glued to his mom's leg. His eyes darted around as he checked the place out. Moose could choose whether he played with the big dogs or the small dogs. He wanted to play with the big dogs, but Fret had a list of worries that made Moose think twice. What if you can't run as fast as the big dogs? What if they think it's weird that you really like squirrels? Giving in to Fret and his worries, Moose chose to play with the small dogs for now. He watched from afar as the big dogs wrestled, chewed, and played, while the small dogs only yipped, and yipped. Yes, thought Moose, this is definitely safer. Louder, but safer. Moose settled in to chew on a bone he'd brought from home. Suddenly, one of the small dogs tried to steal it, and the yipping turned to nipping. Startled, Moose jumped back. This little dog made him nervous, and when Moose got really nervous, he often ran in circles, faster and faster, around and around. But all that did was made his doggy heart beat faster, leaving him breathless and dizzy. So, Moose decided he would simply sit very still. He didn't touch anything or play with anyone until it was time to go home. Before long, Moose noticed that all but one of the other dogs had been picked up by their parents. Fret went wild with this one. What if your dad forgot you? I bet your parents moved to Hawaii. Finally, Dad arrived. It turned out that traffic was terrible. By the time he got home, Moose's brain and body were worn out from a long day of worrying. He snuck into his parents' bedroom and hoped that the fretting would stop. I bet there are cat burglars outside. What if you're not a good enough guard dog? Long ago, Fret had convinced Moose that he needed to do 3 things in a certain order to keep the cat burglars at bay. First, he licked his parents' toes. Then, they took turns kissing his nose. Finally, he turned in a circle exactly 3 times. Moose collapsed into a fitful slumber. Whew! Worrying is exhausting. The next morning, Moose still felt pretty pooped. He dragged himself to the kitchen and stared into his water bowl. As usual, Fret was perched on his shoulder, ready to start the day with more worries. Moose shook his head. This flea has got to go. Fret can no longer run the show. With that, Moose turned and barked at Fret. Stop bugging me! Instantly, a miniature version of Moose appeared on his other shoulder. But this Moose was brave, dressed in a snazzy cape with matching boots. Who are you? Moose asked. I'm Mighty Moose, here to help you with your worries. I've been waiting for you to tell that pesky flea who's boss. But where did you come from? Asked Moose. With a wink, Mighty Moose replied, I'm here all the time, but sometimes Fret is so loud that you can't hear me. Mighty Moose looked pretty courageous. Moose wondered whether Mighty Moose could teach him a thing or two. This time, when Moose and Fret left for daycare, Mighty Moose was right there with them. Anytime Fret piped up, Mighty Moose pushed back. What if you fail at learning how to sit? Learning something new takes practice. You might get bullied by a bulldog. You can always bark back, just don't bite. What do they think it's weird that you really like squirrels? Lots of dogs like squirrels. Surely you're not the only one. Every time Mighty Moose barked back at Fret, Fret got smaller, meeker, and weaker, while Moose felt braver, calmer, and stronger. Moose decided he was ready to run with the big dogs. Boldly, he bounded into the big dog park, determined to face his fears. As it turned out, the big dogs were really friendly. To his surprise, Moose hit it off with a bulldog named Princess, who shared his passion for squirrels. Before Moose even thought to look at the clock, Mom arrived to take him home. He waved goodbye to all his new friends, promising to play tomorrow. On the ride home, he stuck his head out the car window and let his ears flap in the wind. Moose was finally feeling less like a worrier and more like a warrior. That night, Moose felt so good about all the brave choices he'd made during the day that he decided to sleep in his own bed. Though Fret tried to remind him about the scary cat burglars, Moose was thinking more like Mighty Moose now. You know, I've never actually seen a cat burglar, so chances are slim that I'll see one tonight. Even if I do see one, I have a pretty loud bark. And if I'm good at chasing squirrels, I bet I can chase cats too. By now, Fret had shrunk to the size of, well, whatever is even smaller than a flea. Defeated, he reluctantly retreated from Moose's shoulder, vowing to return another day. Moose and Mighty Moose gave each other a high paw in celebration of their victory over Fret the Flea. You've worked really hard today, Moose. Be proud of yourself. And with that, Mighty Moose draped a matching cape over Moose's broad, furry shoulders. Moose's parents came to tuck him into bed. They kissed his nose, he licked their toes, and he curled up in his own comfy bed. He smiled to himself as he realized he didn't need to do things in a certain order or turn in a circle 3 times to feel safe and sound. At last, Moose closed his eyes. He drifted off into a sweet sleep, dreaming of tennis balls, bones, and of course, squirrels. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this story on how to learn to bark back at your worries. See you later.